You've beaten the Elite Four, caught a shiny or two, maybe even transferred your childhood Pikachu from Leaf Green all the way to Scarlet. But now, you're joining a draft league. This isn't about over-leveled Charizards or spamming Earthquake anymore. This is about planning, prediction and preparation. Right here, we've got Pancake, the Alolan Raichu, facing off against a Hisuian Samurott. Looks like an easy fight, right? But depending on their stats, typing, abilities, items and strategy, this battle could flip in either direction fast. And that's the beauty of competitive Pokémon. I'm going to use part of this match as my guide to teach you everything you need to know to get started, so you can play with confidence and actually understand what's happening on screen. Hi, I'm Niels. I've been playing competitive Pokémon for over 20 years. And I've been participating in and hosting draft leagues for almost a decade. Outside of the screen, I'm active in the community. I cast matches at conventions, participate in fan events, and do all sorts of things to bring the competitive scene to life. With this draft league, I want to give you a chance to experience the thrill of competitive battling yourself. It's intense, creative and a lot more fun than you might think. And I can't wait to see the matches you're going to play. Let's begin. Let's start with typings. Each Pokémon and each move has an elemental type. Capchu's Ice type is Bug type, and Alolan Raichu Electric and Psychic. There are 18 types total. Every Pokémon can have one or two types and these determine their strengths and weaknesses. Type matchups change how much damage a move does. If it's super effective, it deals double damage. If it's not very effective, it deals half damage or even quarter damage if the move is resisted twice. If it has no effect, it deals 0 damage. With two types, this stacks. Fire Grass is neutral to water, because fire is weak to water, and grass resists it. Grass Ice is 4 times weak to fire. Being 4 times weak to something can be a one-hit KO territory real quick if you're not careful. Stab stands for Same Type Attack Bonus. If a Pokémon uses a move that matches its own type, it gets a 1.5 times power boost. Raichu using Thunderbolt, it gets a boost. Raichu using Psychic, it also gets a boost. Raichu using Alluring Voice, still good coverage, but it doesn't get the stab boost. It might seem overwhelming at first, but with practice, understanding type matchups becomes an essential skill that comes naturally over time. Pokémon have 6 main stats, each with a specific function during battle. HP or hit points. This is your Pokémon's health. When it hits 0, your Pokémon faints. Higher HP means your Pokémon can take more hits before going down. Attack. This determines the power of your physical moves. Physical moves are marked by an orange explosion icon and scale with this stat. If you're using a move like Earthquake or Close Combat, your attack stat decides how hard it hits. Defense. This reduces the damage your Pokémon takes from physical moves. When your opponent uses a physical attack, your defense stat is used to soften the blow. Special attack. This is like attack but for special moves. Special moves are marked with a blue icon and include things like Flamethrower, Thunderbolt and Psychic. A higher special attack means your special moves deal more damage. Special defense. This is your resistance to special attacks. The higher it is, the less damage you take from moves like Shadow Ball or Ice Beam. Speed. This stat determines which Pokémon moves first each turn. In competitive play, going first can make or break the match. If two Pokémon have the same speed stat, the game randomly decides who moves first. That's called a speed tie. Sometimes you go first, sometimes your opponent does. It's a coin flip that can decide a game, especially in close matchups. Another important part of battling is understanding how stat boosts work. During a fight, moves or abilities can raise or lower your stats in stages from -6 all the way up to +6. Each stage changes your stat by a specific multiplier. +1 means your stat is multiplied by 1.5 times. +2 means your stat is multiplied by 2 times. +3 multiplies your stat by 2.5 times, and so on. Lowering a stat works the same way but in reverse. -1 means your stat drops 2/3 of normal, or 0.67 times. -2 drops your stat to 0.5 times, and -6 all the way to 0.25 times. So if your Pokémon uses Sword Stance and goes to +2 attack, it's hitting twice as hard. But if it's hit by 2 Intimidates and drops to -2 attack, it's only dealing half its normal damage. Besides the main 6 stats, Pokémon battles also involve a few important secondary stats that can change how battles play out. Critical hit ratio or crit rate determines how often your moves land a critical hit, dealing 1.5 times normal damage. Some moves and items raise this chance. Evasion increases your chance to dodge attacks. Moves like Double Team boosts evasion, but many competitive formats ban excessive evasion boosting. Accuracy, the flip side of evasion, your chance to hit the target. Moves like Mud Slap or abilities like Sand Veil can lower the opponent's accuracy. Critical hit damage multiplier. Critical hits normally deal 1.5 times the usual damage, but abilities like Sniper can boost that even further to 2.25 times. Now that we've gone over the stats and what they do, it only makes sense to talk about how you can influence them. EVs, IVs and Natures are tools you can assign to a Pokémon to control how high or low their stats are. They are essential for shaping your Pokémon's role and performance in battle. Let's break down exactly how each one works. EVs, or effort values, are one of the most important ways to customize a Pokémon. They determine which stat gets stronger as your Pokémon levels up. Every 4 EVs translate to 1 stat point at level 100. You get a total of 508 EVs per Pokémon, and can put a maximum of 252 into a single stat. Distributing EVs is like spending stat points in an RPG. Here is what we call a standard spread. 2 main stats with 252 EVs in them, and 4 in another stat for a small bonus. Now you would think that putting the remaining 4 EVs in HP is a no-brainer. However, here are some HP optimization tips. Sometimes even a single point of HP can make a difference. Because Pokémon rounds damage and healing down, certain HP numbers can help your Pokémon take less damage from entry hazards like Stealth Rock, or receive more from healing items like Leftovers. Stealth Rock is a move that sets rocks on the opponent's side of the field, damaging any Pokémon that switches in. Leftovers is a held item that heals 1/16 of a Pokémon's maximum HP at the end of each turn. Odd HP values help you take slightly less damage from recurring damage. Even HP values are needed for some strategies like activating a citrus berry after using the move Belly Drum. Having your HP number divisible by 16 helps maximize healing from leftovers. 1 HP below a multiple of 8 can reduce Stealth Rock damage by 1 point, potentially letting you switch in one more time. If this all feels like a lot, don't worry. Just aim for odd HP values by default, unless your Pokémon is using healing like Leftovers, in which case even HP can sometimes be better. IVs are like your Pokemon's genetics. In the actual games, they are assigned randomly when a Pokemon is caught, but on Showdown you can manually control them. And by default they are set to their best possible values. They range from 0 to 31 for each stat, and each IV equals to 1 stat point at level 100. In Showdown they are usually maxed unless intentionally set lower. Lowering certain IVs can have strategic uses. For example, you can lower your attack to minimize damage from moves like Foul Play or Self-Inflicted Confusion. You can lower your speed if you're playing a Trick Room team. And just like with EVs, you can use HP threshold manipulation to trigger a berry or avoid extra hazard damage. Most of the time you'll want 31 in every stat unless you're a pure special attacker. Then you don't need any in attack or you're aiming for one of these specific strategies. Natures boost one stat by 1.1 times and reduce another stat by 0.9 times. Out of all the stats you can't boost or reduce HP. A standard strategy would be to pick a nature that boosts a max out EV stat and lowers an unused stat. The most commonly used natures in competitive Pokemon are probably one of these. There's Adamant Nature, which boosts your attack and lowers your special attack. This is used by physical attackers. There's Modest, which raises your special attack and lowers your attack, which is used by special attackers. And then there's Jolly and Timid, which boost your speed and lower your attack or special attack respectively. Your nature choice can enhance your strategy or hold you back, so try to match it to your Pokemon's role on the team. An ability is a passive effect unique to a Pokemon. Some are always active, while others are triggered by certain conditions. Pokemon can have 1 to 3 different possible abilities, though only one is active at a time. Immunity prevents the Pokemon from being poisoned, Levitate grants immunity to ground type moves, and Justified raises attack if hit by a dark type move. Some Pokemon have multiple good abilities. For example, Clefable can use Magic Guard, which prevents indirect damage, or Unaware, which ignores stat changes. Heatran can run Flash Fire, which makes it immune to fire type attacks and boosts its own if it gets hit by one. Or Flame Body, which has a chance to burn the attacker if they use a contact move. Some Pokemon have unique abilities exclusive to them, such as Supreme Overload from King Gambit, which boosts power for every fainted ally. Items are held objects that give your Pokemon passive bonuses or activate under certain conditions. Unlike abilities, items are not unique and can be swapped between Pokemon. The choice items boost one of 3 stats, but lock a Pokemon into one move until they either faint, switch out, or lose the item. The choice scarf boosts your speed by 1.5 times, the choice band boosts your attack by 1.5 times, and the choice bags boost your special attack by 1.5 times. There are also other damage boosting items. For example, there's a group of items that boost moves of one particular element by 1.2 times. These include Charcoal to boost fire type moves, Magnet to boost electric type moves, Mystic Water to boost water moves, and many more. There are recovery items. As you already know, leftovers heal 1/16 of a Pokemon's max HP at the end of each turn. And the Citrus Berry heals you for 25% of your maximum HP when you drop below half. There are also defensive utility items. Heavy Duty Boots prevent damage and effects from entry hazards like Stealth Rock or Sticky Web. Focus Sash guarantees survival at 1 HP if you hit from full once. Other utility items include the EV Light, which boosts defense and special defense by 1.5 times if the Pokémon can still evolve. Life Orb boosts all damage by 30% but hurts you little each time you use an attack. Also note that you can't use potions in competitive battles. Healing must come from moves, abilities or held items like berries or leftovers. Moves are how your Pokémon take action in battle. Each move has several properties. Physical moves use the attack stat to calculate damage. Special attacks use the special attack stat to calculate damage. Status moves don't deal damage, but they alter the battle by inflicting conditions, boosting stats, or disrupting the opponent. Every move has a certain base power. The higher the base power, the stronger the move. For example, Flamethrower has a base power of 90, while Ember has a base power of 40. Accuracy determines how often the move hits. 100% means the move always hits, unless the Pokémon's accuracy or evasion is modified. Moves below 80% accuracy are risky. Avoid relying on them unless necessary. PP or power points determine how many times a move can be used. Lower PP is often tied to stronger moves. Priority determines who acts first regardless of speed. Quick Attack has a priority of +1, which lets you move first against most standard moves with neutral priority, even if the opponent is faster. Protect has a priority of +4, meaning it usually goes first. It's often used to scout without taking damage. This gives you valuable information for your next play. Trick Room has a negative priority of -7, meaning it always goes last in the turn. However, once it's active, it reverses the turn order for the next 5 turns. Slower Pokémon move before faster ones unless moves with higher priority are used. Some attacks have bonus chances or added effects. Thunderbolt has a 10% chance to paralyze the defending Pokémon. Flare Blitz may burn and cause recoil. Body Press uses the defense stat instead of the attack stat for damage calculation. Close Combat lowers both of your defenses after you use it. And some moves even thaw the user if they are frozen. And here's something that surprises a lot of new players. Even damage isn't 100% fixed. Moves have a damage range called high and low rolls. To make things easier for you, I'll spare you the math. When you attack, the game randomly picks a number between about 85% and 100% of your calculated damage. So sometimes your move just barely misses the KO, or sometimes it hits a bit harder than you'd expect. That's why experienced players talk about rolls and say things like it's a 50% chance to KO. It's all because of this random damage range. Field effects are split into 4 main types: weather, terrain, rooms, and utility conditions. Only one weather, terrain, or room can be active at a time, but each of those can coexist with a utility effect. Weather is summoned by abilities or moves and can last 5 or 8 turns with the appropriate held item. Sunny Weather boosts fire moves by 1.5 times, reduces water moves by 0.5 times, enables abilities like Chlorophyll and Solar Power, boosts moves like Solar Beam and Growth, and turns the move Weather Ball into a fire type. Rain boosts water type moves by 1.5 times and weakens fire type moves by 0.5 times. It enables abilities like Swift Swim or Rain Dish, boosts moves like Thunder or Hurricane, and turns the move Weather Ball into a water type. Sandstorm damages non-rock, ground or steel types at the end of each turn. It boosts the special defense of rock type Pokémon by 1.5 times, enables abilities like Sand Rush or Sand Veil, and turns Weather Ball into a rock type. And last we have Snow. Snow boosts the defense stat of ice types by 1.5 times. Enables the use of the move Aurora Veil, the ability Slush Rush, and boosts the move Blizzard so that it can't miss. Snow turns Weather Ball into an Ice type attack. Terrains are summoned by moves or abilities and affect grounded Pokémon only. They can be extended with the Terrain Extender item. Electric Terrain boosts electric moves by 1.3 times, prevents sleep, and activates the Quark Drive ability. Grassy Terrain boosts grass moves by 1.3 times, heals HP at the end of each turn, and weakens the attack Earthquake. It also activates the ability Grassy Pelt. Psychic Terrain boosts psychic moves by 1.3 times and prevents priority moves. It also boosts Expanding Force. Misty Terrain halves the damage of Dragon type moves and prevents all status conditions. Rooms last 5 turns, can't be extended and are only set by moves. There's Trick Room, which reverses the speed order so that the slow Pokémon move first. Wonder Room, which swaps all Pokémon's defense and special defense. And Magic Room, which prevents Pokémon from using items. Utility conditions include Reflect, which halves damage from physical attacks, Light Screen, which halves damage from special attacks, Aurora Veil, which halves all damage, Tailwind, which doubles the speed of your Pokémon for 4 turns, and Gravity, which increases move accuracy and grounds all Pokémon. These field effects can drastically change the outcome of a match, so keep an eye on what's active. Status conditions affect the Pokémon's ability to battle. There are 2 main types. Non-volatile statuses persist even after switching out and usually require healing to remove. Being burned makes a Pokémon take 1/16 of its maximum HP at the end of each turn and cuts its attack stat in half. Paralysis reduces a Pokémon's speed by 50% and has a 25% chance to make the affected Pokémon unable to act. Poison, like burn, makes your Pokémon take 1/16 of its maximum HP at the end of each turn. If the Pokémon is badly poisoned, the damage starts at 1/16 of the Pokémon's maximum HP and increases by 1/16 each turn, essentially doubling the damage every 2 turns. This increase resets after switching out. Sleep makes your Pokémon unable to act for 1 to 3 turns. And Freeze makes your Pokémon unable to do anything, but it has a chance to thaw each turn. Using certain fire type moves like Flare Blitz can thaw the Pokémon using it. Some types are immune to specific statuses. Electric types can't be paralyzed, fire types can't be burned, poison and steel types can't be poisoned, and ice types can't be frozen. Volatile statuses wear off after a while or once you switch out. These include Confusion, which may cause the Pokémon to hurt itself instead of moving, Flinch, which skips the Pokémon's move, and Infatuation, which leaves the Pokémon at a 50% chance to be immobilized if it gets hit by moves like Attract. Each Pokémon generation introduces a new battle gimmick, a mechanic that shakes up the meta. In Gen 6 we had Mega Evolution. Certain Pokémon were able to evolve mid-battle into more powerful forms. In Gen 7 we had Z moves, which were super-powered attacks based on held items that you could use once per match. Gen 8 had Dynamax, which gave your Pokémon a temporary size boost, doubling its HP and giving it powerful max moves. This was banned in most competitive formats. And in Generation 9, which is the format we play in, we have terrestrialization. Terrestrialization allows a Pokémon to change its type once per battle into a special Terra type. This grants Stab to the new type, removes previous weaknesses and resistances, and if you Terra into a type you already have, Stab goes from 1.5 times to 2 times. It's a key mechanic in Gen 9 and your team needs to be built with it in mind. There's also a special twist to terrestrialization called the Stellar Terra type. Unlike other Terra types, Stellar doesn't change your Pokémon's original type defensively. Instead, it adds a unique offensive boost. Here's how it works. After terrestrializing into Stellar, your Pokémon keeps its regular typing for defense. Offensively, the first time you use a move of any given type, it gets a 1.5 damage boost. But this only happens once per type. Use that same type again later and there's no extra power boost. Terra Blast also changes under Stellar. It becomes a 100 base power, 100 accuracy move and hits super effectively if your Pokémon is terrestrialized. However, it comes with a downside. Using Stellar Terra Blast lowers your attack and special attack by 1 stage. Now that we've covered the essentials, let's take another look at the battle. This time with context. I lead with Pancake the Alolan Raichu. My opponent leads with Hisuian Samurott. Since Raichu is an electro type and Samurott is part water, I go for Thunderbolt. It's super effective and Raichu should be faster, right? Turns out no. Samurott moves first and knocks out Raichu with Ceaseless Edge. This tells us something very important. Samurott is running a Choice Scarf. Even though Raichu has the higher base speed, the Scarf gives Samurott a 1.5 times speed boost, enough to outspeed and surprise Pancake. This is the kind of hidden information competitive players are trained to recognize immediately. And now you can too. Now that you've seen how a real battle situation plays out, let's talk about what to expect as you begin building your own team and playing more seriously. Competitive battling is a different beast compared to in-game adventures. You're no longer battling NPCs that keep their Pokémon in until they faint. You're facing human opponents. They switch, they predict, and they build teams with one goal: winning. You might love your childhood favorite Pokémon, but in competitive, most players will use whatever gives them the best chance to win. That doesn't mean you can't use your favorites, but it does mean you need to understand their strengths and weaknesses. In casual play, people rarely switch, but in competitive matches, switching is crucial. It lets you respond to threats and reposition your team for better matchups. Skilled players use switching not just defensively, but as a tool to gain momentum and control the flow of the battle. One of the most skill-intensive parts of competitive Pokémon is predicting what your opponent will do. Will they stay in? Will they switch? Will they go for a setup move or attack? It's a bit like a mix of chess and poker. You're calculating possibilities while trying to read your opponent's intentions. Learning to anticipate their moves and not being predictable yourself is vital to winning matches. From critical hits to move misses, luck is part of the game. It can affect individual turns or even decide a whole match. The key is learning to play in a way that makes you less reliant on luck and helps you stay consistent over time. In the next sections, we'll dive into team building, move pools and how to make smarter decisions during battle. But here's the twist. We're not talking about building for the Smogon ladder or VGC tournaments. We're talking about Draft League, a unique format where you can't use every Pokémon. Instead, you build your roster through a draft and prep each week with a specific opponent's team in mind. Before we dig into how draft leagues work, let's step back and understand what sets them apart by looking at the two most common competitive formats. Starting with Smogon Singles. Smogon Singles is a fan-made 1v1 format known for its consistency and balance. You have full control over your team and can use any Pokémon allowed in your chosen tier. The most popular tier is OU or Overused, which consists of Pokémon commonly seen on the competitive ladder. Tiers like OU, UU, which stands for underused, and RU, which stands for rarely used, form organically based on how often Pokémon are used by players. If a Pokémon is too strong for its tier, it gets banned. If it's not used enough, it drops to a lower tier. This system keeps each tier relatively balanced. Most battles happen on platforms like Pokémon Showdown, which uses Smogon's rule set to simulate battles quickly and easily. If you're practicing for Draft League or just want to improve your fundamentals, Smogon Singles will be your go-to format for getting reps in. The other competitive format is VGC. VGC is the official tournament format. Battles are 2v2 and highly strategic, emphasizing synergy, redirection, speed control and positioning. With open team sheets and time pressure, decision making has to be quick and precise. Matches tend to be fast and aggressive, often ending within 8 to 10 turns. So where does Draft League fit in? If Smogon is about mastering the meta and VGC is about synergy under pressure, then Draft League is about adaptation, creativity and long-term planning. You build a team from scratch, one that no one else in your league has. And then you prepare every week for one specific opponent. Like in Smogon Singles, Draft Leagues use a set of clauses to keep the format balanced and fair. Evasion clause means you cannot use moves that increase a Pokémon's evasion, such as Double Team or Minimize. Sleep clause prevents you from putting more than one of your opponent's Pokémon to sleep at the same time. Other standard clauses may include the Species clause, the Item clause, or the OCO clause, depending on the league's rule set. These are just examples, and you can find all the rules and clauses in the Google Sheet linked in the video description below. Let's take a look at what makes this format so unique. Draft League is a seasonal format built around personal teams, weekly matchups, and constant adaptation. The draft itself is the most unique thing about this format. Unlike Smogon or VGC, where you can use any legal Pokémon, in a draft each Pokémon can only be picked once. If you draft Landorus, no one else can use it, it's yours. This leads to an important concept in Draft League called sniping, when another player drafts a Pokémon you wanted before you get the chance. It happens often and learning to adapt on the fly is part of the strategy. Players, usually 8 to 16, take turns selecting Pokémon from a tiered pool, either using a point-based system, where each Pokémon has a cost and players draft within a budget, or a fixed tier system, where you pick a set number of Pokémon from each tier, like 1 S-tier Pokémon, 2 A-tier Pokémon, and so on. Our league uses the fixed tier approach. Regardless of the structure, once a Pokémon is drafted, it's locked to that team. This makes team building highly strategic and personal. Since only one of each Pokémon exists in the league, lesser used or budget picks gain value. If Xianpao gets sniped, Weavile becomes a viable replacement. Garchomp gone, maybe Flygon or Zygarde 10% get the job done. And yes, you'll probably end up drafting a few awkward Pokémon. But the fun of draft comes from making those work. Drafting this guy and winning with it, that's the magic. You start getting attached to those weird picks. They are your team after all. Here's another major difference from other formats. You're not prepping for the entire meta. You're prepping for one opponent per week. Your opponent has 9 to 12 Pokémon, you have 9 to 12 Pokémon. Each of you brings 6 to battle, but you don't know which 6 until the match starts. This opens the door to some of the most creative and unexpected strategies in competitive play. Sometimes it's worth ditching a standard set in favor of a surprise. Choice backs Ferrothorn with Thunder into a Rain team, or a Choice Bandit Mischievous with Shadow Sneak to snipe a frail threat like Alakazam. That's the magic of draft. Using the benefit of foresight to create counter strategies that wouldn't make sense on the ladder, but work brilliantly in a one-time matchup. Unlike many draft leagues that end in a playoff bracket, our format uses a round-robin system, with rematches to determine the champion. Every player battles every other player once, and then again. After the first round-robin phase, there's also an option for a redraft. Players can drop Pokémon they didn't like and pick new ones from the remaining pool. This format rewards consistency and adaptability across the season. With the chance to redeem yourself in a rematch, and a chance to reshuffle your team beforehand, you get to test how well you learn, adapt and grow. It also means your final standing is based on your overall performance, not just a single upset or streak of bad luck. The better your long-term prep and improvement, the better your odds at claiming the title. By now, you've got a solid idea why Draft League is amazing. But why is it so niche? Draft leagues take time. Depending on the number of players, over 12 to 20 weeks, you're building new teams, scheduling battles, and sometimes playing people in vastly different time zones. But the structure also encourages regular engagement. Weekly battles give structure to content, and team building streams or collabs offer a way to involve your community and make preparation part of the experience. It's not always easy to find or join a draft league. Most operate on Discord and require applications. But in our close VTuber league, you've got a known group, dedicated space, and supportive viewers who will follow the journey. That built-in community removes one of the biggest hurdles of draft leagues. Being able to prepare for a specific team is awesome, but it also means your opponent can do the same. Sets can be tailor-made to break your team in a way that would never happen on ladder. But this creates moments of creative outplay and innovation, and that's what makes the format exciting. For example, if your opponent preps to wall your usually offensive core, but you bring an unaccepted setup mono or support Pokémon with a surprise utility move, you can flip the match in your favor and turn their prep against them. That feeling, when your plan works and your tech catches them off guard, is one of the most rewarding parts of draft leagues. Ultimately, draft leagues thrive on passion, preparation, and personal growth. With the added bonus of a public platform like streaming, the format has more potential than ever to grow and entertain, in my opinion. Now that you understand what a draft league is and how it works, it's time to go beyond the basics. In this section, I break down the finer points of preparation, team development, and strategic adaptation that can give you a competitive edge over your opponents. Before your draft even begins, there are a few key things to keep in mind. Know how many Pokémon you're drafting, the rules for Terra types or items, and whether you're using a point-based or tier-based draft. Familiarize yourself with what's allowed and what's banned. Ask yourself what kind of a player you are. Do you enjoy walling and outlasting? Hyper offense with setup and pressure? Balanced cores that adapt? Understanding your comfort zone helps you draft Pokémon that naturally play into your strengths. Look through the available Pokémon list before the draft starts. Top tier threats are high priority picks everyone will want. Know which ones you'd grab if you get early picks. Look for reliable role fillers. Pokémon that provide hazard removal, status spreading, pivoting or priority. You'll need these to round out your roster. Look for budget options. If you don't get your top picks, which lower tier Pokémon can still perform similar roles? Look for Pokémon that complement each other, defensively or offensively. For example, drafting a normal type attacker with a ghost type that can switch in on fighting moves helps reduce your weaknesses. Planning in advance allows you to pivot more easily during the draft and still end up with a functional and cohesive team. Once your draft is complete, the first step is to identify your team core. A combination of offensive threats, defensive pivots, and support Pokémon that most of your weekly teams will center around. For the offensive core, choose 1 to 2 Pokémon that apply pressure, break walls, or sweep teams. These should be your primary damage dealers. For a defensive core, include a mix of Pokémon that cover each other's weaknesses. Think about resistances, recovery options, and hazard control. For support and utility, look for hazard setters, clerics, pivot moves like U-turn or volt switch, status spreaders, and wall breakers. Ask yourself, can I cover all major attacking types? Do I have at least one reliable hazard mover and one setter? Can I pivot out of bad matchups or recover momentum? Each week you're prepping for one opponent. You know their draft, they know yours. This makes scouting an essential skill. Look for patterns. What Pokémon do they bring most often? Do they favor bulky cores, fast offense, setup sweepers? Are there any Pokémon on their draft that seem redundant? Adapt your sets. Speed creep. Outspeed what they are likely to bring. Don't just smack speed blindly. Use custom IVs to give your Pokémon enough bulk to survive key hits or enough power to get crucial KOs. Build creative techs. Surprise options like Wackenberry for electric moves or safety goggles to ignore powder moves. Once you're in the match, you're playing against a person, not just a team. That means prediction and psychology come into play. Predicting their switch and sending your answer before they even act is called a double switch. Sending in a weak Pokémon to lure a threat and then punishing it is called baiting. Sometimes it's worth burning or poisoning a wall if it means your win condition stays healthy. Mid-ground plays are your safest option. Instead of hard predicting, choose a move that works decently whether they stay in or switch. The longer the season goes on, the more information you'll gather. Track the used sets. Write down what your opponents bring and how they EV. That info helps in a rematch or even against similar opponents. Review your games. Watch replays, spot misplays, and learn from what worked and what didn't. Draft League is as much about your headspace as it's about your team. I can't stress this enough. Don't tilt from RNG or losses. Stick to your preparation, trust your sets, and play patiently. And if things go wrong, try to adapt. The best players aren't just good at battling. They are consistent, curious, and always learning. When it comes to weekly prep, move pools are where creativity comes alive, and where your team can either shine or fall short. The more versatile a Pokémon's move pool, the more threats it can answer and roles it can fill. A broad move pool allows a Pokémon to be unpredictable and adapt to different opponents. Narrow move pools may limit your options and make your plays more obvious. Make sure your team as a whole has good type coverage. Your attackers should hit common threats super effectively, or at least neutral. Try to avoid stacking weaknesses or having only one answer to specific types like Flying, Steel or Fairy. Consider which Pokémon have access to key utility moves like Thunder Wave, Toxic, Anchor, Taunt or Haze. These can shut down setup sweepers or wall out important threats. Role compression is one of the most important concepts in draft leagues. Because you're only drafting a limited number of Pokémon, you want each pick to ideally fill multiple roles. For example, an electric type that can pivot, spread status and revenge kill. A ward that can also set hazards and has recovery. A Dragon Dance user with priority and decent bulk. Every role your team needs, hazard setting, hazard removal, speed control, pivoting, wall breaking, status spreading, should ideally be covered by as few Pokémon as possible. Smart drafting and creative move pool use is what makes the best draft league teams so dangerous. Now that your team is drafted and your weekly prep is solid, the next step is understanding how to win games consistently. And that starts with identifying your win condition, the Pokémon, strategy or combination of both that gives you the clearest path to victory in each match. A win condition is anything that can close out the game if properly supported. It could be a sweeper, like Dragon Dance Salamence or Core Mind Iron Valiant, a wall breaker that can slowly wear down the opposing team, like Hooper Unbound, or a hazard stacking core that chips down the enemy roster over time. When you build your team for a match, ask yourself, what is my win condition this week? What needs to be removed or weakened to let it clean up? A well-identified win condition makes team building, switch decisions and sacrifices much easier. Once you've chosen a win condition, the rest of your team should work to support it. This might include hazard stacking to wear down enemy attacks, lures that bait and weaken or remove key threats, status spreading to slow down or cripple opposing sweepers, wall breaking to open holes in bulky cores, or pivots to get your win con in safely. For example, if your win condition is Dragon Dance Dragapult, maybe you bring a special wall breaker like Gengar to destroy the physical walls and a bulky water type like Slowbro to pivot and check threats. Great Draft League players always have an endgame in mind. These include: what does the final 1v1 look like? What Pokemon must survive until late game? And what early game traits are worth it? You want to steer the match in the direction that benefits you the most. That means avoiding unnecessary risks with your win condition early on, scouting for opposing threats and chipping key walls as needed. Sometimes your original plan won't work. Maybe you misread their prep or they bought a surprise set that counters your strategy. That's okay. A great player adapts on the fly. You might find a new win condition halfway through the game. Be open to changing your plan and recognizing when something else is the better path to victory. For example, you prep to win with the bulk up Iron Hands, but it's walled by a Mungus. However, you notice the Mungus is the only switch in to your Scarf Goldango. Suddenly, your new plan becomes chip the Amoonguss, remove it and sweep with Goldango. One of the biggest mistakes new players make is putting everything into one win condition. And when that mon gets crit or paralyzed, they tilt and lose. Have backup plans. Identify 2 to 3 Pokemon that could clean up or carry the game depending on how it plays out. Flexibility doesn't mean being wishy-washy. It means you're prepared for multiple outcomes. By understanding win conditions, building your team around them, and being willing to adapt mid-game, you give yourself the best chance to succeed in any matchup. Let's walk through an actual prep scenario using 2 draft teams. In this example, I'm working with Team A. Looking at these 2 teams, one Pokemon for Team A stands out right away: Meteor. It's faster than everything on the opposing team and it has perfect coverage to hit every single Pokemon super effectively or neutrally. So, Meteor becomes the win condition. If it gets to +2 special attack via Meteor Beam and stays in its shield down form, it can potentially sweep the entire opposing team. The next step is choosing Pokemon that can support Meteor's sweep. In this case, Grubbin was chosen for Sticky Web, helping Meteor outspeed even faster threats in case a Choice Scarf user shows up. Alolan Meowth brings Parting Shot support, allowing a safe switch in while weakening the opponent. And Sandshrew provides Stealth Rock to chip opponents on switch in and Rapid Spin to keep hazards off my own field. While prepping, I noticed Floragato has similar coverage to Meteor, and with Sticky Web in place, it would also outspeed most of the opposing team. So Floragato is built as a backup cleaner in case Meteor can't get the job done. Finally, the last slot went to Crabrawler. Was it the most optimal pick? Maybe not, but it was a Pokemon I wanted to try out and had reasonable offensive potential. And sometimes, fun is part of the equation. With one clear win condition, multiple support tools and a backup plan in place, I've created a solid prep. Whether Meteor sweeps or Floragato cleans up the endgame. I've got a plan, a structure, and the right tools to execute it. Now that your prep is complete, it's time to hit the battlefield. Even the best prep can fall apart if the match is misplayed. So let's go over how to execute your plan while adapting to unexpected situations. Choose a lead that gives you early momentum or threaten multiple targets. Sometimes a passive lead like a hazard setter is safest, but aggressive leads can punish predictable openers. Ask yourself what the worst lead is you could face and how you would handle it. Use the early game to scout items, sets and switch habits. Pay attention to damage rolls and speed order. You can learn a lot from small details. Try to make safe trades early if they weaken your opponent's support core or open the path for your win condition. Start maneuvering your team to set up your win condition. Get hazards up, chip down walls and spread status. Use pivot moves to maintain control. When key threats are removed, bring in your win condition and go for the close. At this point, safe play and clean execution matter more than big reads. In case things go wrong, always have a plan B. If your win condition is crippled, look for an alternative route and never tunnel vision on your original plan. This format is about adapting. Even with all the knowledge and preparation in the world, Draft League can still punish the inexperienced. Here are some of the most common mistakes players make and how to avoid them. Everyone has a favorite underdog. But in a format where every pick matters, falling in love with a gimmick can cost you weeks of success. Don't pick something just because it sounds fun. Make sure it fills a real role. If you want to try something off meta, support it properly and understand its limitations. Speed tiers win games. If your fastest Pokémon is base 90 speed, you're asking to get outpaced every week. Always include at least 1 or 2 Pokémon that hit 100 plus base speed. And don't forget about priority, sticky web and rapid spin support. Hazards decide close games. Rocks chip down everything. Spikes and T-spikes apply pressure, and if you can't remove them, you will suffer. Don't skip hazard removal unless you have a very good reason. Make sure your main wall breaker isn't weak to rocks without heavy duty boots or rapid spin support. Tunnel vision is a killer. If you spend too much time prepping for one scary Pokémon, you'll often lose to something else entirely. Cover the obvious threats, but remember, you're fighting a team, not a single Pokémon. Think about how your opponent might use that threat, not just if it's coming. Being too safe lets your opponent set up for free. Being too aggressive leads to risky sacrifices or bad reads. Balance is key. Identify the turns where you can safely pressure. One of the fastest ways to improve is reviewing your games, but many players skip it. Watch your replays, take notes, and ask others for feedback. Look for habits. Do you always lead the same way? Do you panic after one of your Pokémon dies? Drafting a bunch of strong Pokémon isn't the same as drafting a good team. Think about switch-ins, cores, and roles. Don't double up on weaknesses unless there's a plan behind it. By understanding and avoiding these common pitfalls, you'll save yourself a ton of frustration and probably steal a few more wins along the way. And that's it. You now have a complete understanding of how Draft League works, from drafting, prepping and battling, all the way to adapting mid-match and improving each week. If you're ready to jump in, the Google Sheet link below has everything you need. Rules, tier lists, schedule and more. The draft itself will be live on Discord at a set date, so make sure you're there to claim your team. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or ask in the server. You're all learning together and the goal is to have fun, grow and make some great matches happen. Good luck and I can't wait to see what teams you build.